I've wanted to talk to you for a couple of years for a number of reasons. One reason is that I occasionally go to this synagogue around the corner from my place called Yeshiva Synagogue, and there's this guy there who he's like a bit soft in the head, and he's got like a little snuff box, and he runs around and gets everyone to sniff from the snuff box. Anyway, so we're all just used to it. But 2 elections ago, when you were campaigning, you came to Yeshiva Synagogue, and that guy came running up to you and made you sniff from the snuff box, and you thought it was like some Jewish ritualistic thing that you have to do to not be offensive to Jews or whatever. And you were there with the most solemn face, and you sniffed it very respectfully. And I've always wanted to tell you that guy's just nuts, and it had nothing to do with Judaism.
No, I've been to many synagogues over the years. I've never come across that before or since.
Okay, now that's out of the way. Now, when I first heard that you were becoming UN Special Envoy to Cyprus, I was thinking, now here's another thing we all have to learn about, another conflict that we just don't know about. Can you give, like, the blurb of who's arguing with who in Cyprus?
Yeah, I want to be very careful what I say about this, but basically it's split between the Greek and the Turkish communities, and the split, of course, is quite historic, but in more recent times goes back to the events of 1974, and so there are...
And what are those events?
Well, there was an attempted coup d'etat and the overthrow of the government in Cyprus, and Turkish troops came in, and there was the island has been divided ever since. So this gets to the problem of it being a divided island and how to reunify it, and reunify it in a way that both the Greek and the Turkish communities feel comfortable. So it's no easy challenge. Those events I very roughly described go back to 1974, so that's a fair few years ago.
And do both sides want reunification, or are there like one or either of the side just want the whole island to themselves, or do one or either of the side just want to split the island in two?
Well, no doubt. I can't tell you what the polls show. I've never been to Cyprus. I haven't been there yet. I'm hoping to go in the next week or so. But the leadership of the communities is now very much in favour of reunifying the island. There's no doubt about that. But of course, the issue is on what terms they would reunify. That's the problem. There was an attempt a few years ago, 4 years ago, by the United Nations to produce a plan to reunify Cyprus, a pretty complicated plan, and it was put to a referendum in both the Turkish and the Greek areas, and it was defeated by the Greek Cypriots. Very few of them supported it, and so nothing much has happened since then. So this is a new effort with new leadership of both the Greek and Turkish communities to try to achieve the so far elusive peace settlement.
I should have interrupted him by now, don't you reckon? He's like, just what going on?
Do you want
I
Mr. Downer says we have to be very sensitive. Because I know a lot.
Yes, you certainly wouldn't want to get into picking
sides. You wouldn't want to, would I? Especially a Roman Catholic priest, for God's sake. But and especially also since I understand now, which I didn't 30 years ago, that in fact the Cypriot Orthodox Church is in fact what's the term they use in the trade is autocephalous, meaning it doesn't have to take its cap off to Constantinople as the Patriarchate.
What are you talking about, Bob? No one knows what you're talking about.
Right.
They're an independent, ancient, independent Orthodox group.
Do you want Bob to provide you with advice before you go over?
Sounds as though he could. I'm certainly not familiar with the status of the Orthodox Church.
It's fascinating because, in fact, that was so much of their recent history. It was the leader of their community was in fact Archbishop Makarios.
Yeah,
and that's we say nothing more. Because
he was the leader, wasn't he? Immediately after independence,
yes,
and
yes,
a well-known figure around the Commonwealth,
yes.
Because of course Cyprus is a member of the Commonwealth.
Hey, another group that's going to be annoying you now in your new role is the Jehovah's Witnesses. Did you know that? Because
no, I wasn't familiar with that.
Because there's apparently heaps of them in jail in Cyprus because they refuse to join the army, and you have to join the army or some version of that.
Oh, OK, I've had no representations to the best of my knowledge from Jehovah's Witnesses. I have from the Greek and Turkish communities in Australia. Well, they've sent me very warm and helpful and positive messages, but I haven't had any Jehovah's Witnesses.
Well, if they start knocking on the door, don't assume it's like a conversion type thing. It might just be to kind of give you some tips on Cyprus.
Yes. Well, thank you for the warning. I'll prepare for it. I'll make sure I familiarise myself with the issue.
Now, huge things happened under your watch when you were Foreign Minister, including the invasion of Iraq. Now, I've always wondered, like, when you see, like, the protests and, like, someone's, like, really fiery and, like, throwing themselves on your bonnet of your car and saying you're a murderer and stuff, does that, like, hurt your feelings, or are you just, oh, who's this lunatic?
It depends on the circumstances and the context, really. It's hard to answer that question. I mean, in the main, it's just part of the political process, and you wouldn't want to become a political leader if you couldn't cope with the fact there'd be people who disagree with you. Sometimes they very sincerely disagree with you. Sometimes they disagree with you for sort of partisan reasons. I don't support your team, so everything you say and do, I hate. There's a bit of that, of course, in politics.
But if I get like an email and someone's like saying nasty things about me, I just get really hurt.
Oh no, you must get them the whole time, though. No,
No, he loves to get hurt, Alexander. He loves to get hurt.
Yeah.
He enjoys it.
People, I'm not sure who sends these emails, but there must be because you don't seem to meet them in the street, but there must be a coterie of people out there who send hate emails.
Hang on, weren't there like 100,000 people in the street protesting the war in Iraq?
I was talking about the emails.
Yes.
You mean in relation to Iraq?
Yes.
Well, I'm not sure what then.
But didn't that, like, did you, like, just have doubts or whatever? Like, I change my mind all the time on things because issues are really emotional, and then you just have to hear one really emotional thing from one side. So did you ever...
Well, I could... I suppose I could understand the point they were making, but for me, I thought getting rid of Saddam Hussein would be a good thing to do. The protests would have been in early 2003, I think, before the war broke out. But no, I thought it was the right thing to do, and I think Australia the Australians who were involved there played a useful role. Of course, we weren't main players. And of course, the point is, whatever we had done in this country, the Americans still would have invaded Iraq. We wouldn't have been able to change that particular event taking place.
And I know Gareth Evans, his daughter, like, was a troublemaker who said she didn't agree with his policies. Do you ever have, like, fights with your family or with close friends over policy decisions?
No, fights. Within my family, they pretty much gone along over the years with the things I've done, certainly with the policies I've pursued. So I haven't really had too much of a problem within my own family. Well, there's not to say it was a problem, but in 1999, during the Republican referendum, some of my family favoured the Republic and some of them favoured the present system. So we didn't particularly talk about it much, but that was a difference we had within our family. But no, mainly not. With friends, some of my friends, yeah, sure. I mean, some of them...
Have you lost friends? Because I think with the Iraq thing...
No,
now that it's
friends.
kind of like petered out a bit, where it's less emotional now. But at the actual moment when Australia was either going to go to war or not go to war, like, people were just furious and so heated. Did you not have, like, I don't know, your wife's friends or anyone's, or your kids, like, just...
Well, some of them were opposed, there's no doubt about... Not within my family, but some of my friends supported the decision, some of them opposed it. No, they didn't sort of reduce that to the personal. Didn't talk about it an enormous amount with them, but it did a bit. They asked me a lot of questions about it, particularly those who were opposed, but I guess they wouldn't be my friends if they were rude the whole time.
No.
Sort of outraged at everything I did. I mean, they understood why I took the view that I took, and I understood why they took the view they took. Actually, it's one of the differences between being a child and when you grow up. I mean, when you grow up, you accept that people have different points of view and you're able to talk to each other about it in a civilised way, not yell at each other.
Do you think I went hard enough on him about Iraq?
Timor became independent. Can you tell me if this theory's got any water or not? Which is that Paul Keating was so pro-Indonesia and the Indonesian government that unless John Howard would have won the election, wouldn't have necessarily have rolled out that, Habibie would have put up a referendum which would have led to the Timorese wanting independence, which would have led to Timor becoming independent. Is that a stupid theory?
Well, we'll never know, of course, the truth of that, because the truth could never have been put to the test. But I think it's unlikely that what happened would have happened in 1998-99.
Do you know a lot about the Uyghurs?
No.
In the Xinjiang region of China, I think it's also pronounced Uyghurs.
Mm-hmm.
So, surely
I don't know.
But you're foreign. I guess this is the wider. If you're foreign minister, are you just expected to know everything about every conflict everywhere?
I know an awful lot about most conflicts, but I don't know everything. No, well, if you know, you don't. There inevitably be things you don't come across, I suppose.
Nailed him on the Uyghur issue.
On the side of the Uyghurs in this conflict, it's that one. It's a bit like Tibet, but in a different part of China, another little ethnic group.
Okay. Are they being oppressed, though, do you feel?
Yes. Or at least they say they are. They're
are
like
they not being recognised?
Yeah, no,
they're not being recognised?
Yeah, they want it to become East Turkestan.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I was hoping you'd give us
complete
guidance.
Independence?
Yes, some of them yes, some of them no.
I doubt that it would be a widely held view. It might not be...
autonomy would do, probably.
Autonomy, yeah, they might be, but me and Bob are more widely supported.
Me and Bob are big militants, so we want total independence.
Well, interestingly enough, when you talk about Tibet... people often overlook this, but even the Dalai Lama isn't arguing for Tibet to become an independent country. He's just saying that its autonomy needs to be more appropriately recognised.
Cuba. Tell us which side we should be on in Cuba. We had a woman last week on, and she told us we had to be on Fidel Castro's side, and we're idiots if we weren't.
Alexander will know the woman, Joan Coxedge.
Ah, yes, I know who she is, yeah. Yes. Right.
So whose side should we go on in that?
I think you should be, as you've been sort of implying in a lot of your questions through this interview, you'd be on the side of human rights and the ordinary people of the country. And I think the honest truth of Cuba is that there's a case you can make. For example, I didn't hear her interview, but she probably said this: they have a very good health service.
Yes.
And good doctors. That's a bit of a cliche.
They export them around the world.
But yes, they do. But let's just think about if you didn't like the government very much in Cuba and you decided to demonstrate, like the 100,000 people you referred to who demonstrated in 2003, you'd be in the slammer. And Cuba is a country which has no personal freedom, political freedom. Cuba is a country that has a large number of political prisoners.
Yes.
And I think it's a country with a very poor human rights record. So... I don't have any sympathy for the regime there.
Do you know any secrets that you can't tell anyone?
Well,
we won't tell anyone.
I was the minister responsible
stuff like, George Bush had that person secretly killed, but, by skull and bones or whatever, but you just can't say it?
Well, obviously not something like that, but I do... I was the minister responsible for the Australian Secret Intelligence Service, so obviously I know all about how that works. And they are secrets that you take to your grave with you. I don't share those sorts of things even with my family.
Wow, that's very exciting. Maybe I'll take you out and get you drunk one night.
The listeners might be interested to know there's something about intelligence, intelligence services and the like, that we get an image from James Bond films and so on, but in truth there's something remarkably prosaic about them, really.
Of course, you would say that, wouldn't you?
Yes, all right. Well, at least I might, but on the other hand, I do know an awful lot about it. Most people don't.
Now, aren't you becoming part of some lobby group called the Bespoke Approach?
Yeah, it's not a lobby group, it's a business consultancy, so it's up and running now, and I work with the former Labor Cabinet Minister, Nick Bolkus, and... a sort of long-term consultant, a man called Ian Smith, and what we do is we do work for individual companies in all sorts of different ways. In my case, I focus on helping them internationally and helping international companies understand policies and the like here in Australia. And Nick Bolkus, as you can imagine, is very close to the federal Labor government and the state Labor governments around Australia.
So
and,
if you want to change policy...
He's the businessman.
If you want to change government policy, is it easier to hire a bespoke approach or to protest?
Well, I don't think so much changing government policy, but understanding how to deal not only with governments but with the broader community. Do protests change government policy? It depends who organises the protests, actually. It depends who's protesting.
The Chaser was good at it, wasn't it? They were good.
Yes,
but I'm waiting for them to change World Youth Day with the Pope.
Yes, turn up in a Pope-mobile, having turned up at APEC as Canadians. I know we were meant to be outraged
now it's getting
about
boring,
it, but
Bob. We should have wrapped it up.
Rather amusing,
to tell you the
honest truth. It wasn't the greatest demonstration of Australian security at work, but it was pretty amusing.
So
but,
it sounds like you're saying that's like how you
Bob.
dress to the
How do we
protest.
not
So if you
wrap it
dress
up
up as
at
sort
this
of a
point?
hippie, you're not going to listen to them. But if you're in a business suit,
but if
you will.
take any more helium,
it's not as simple as
we
that.
won't have to
There's
worry
a sort
about
of,
that.
a notion of a notion there that's worth reflecting on, but it's more political activists.
Pinko leftists.
You know, sort of well-known organisations which are... they're mainly left. They're not all left, but they are mainly left. Political activists tend, if you're a politician, just to make you think, well, you know, there they go again. Whereas if they're more part of the mainstream of society, they're not people who are political activists, but people who are genuinely very concerned about some specific issue, not just ranting on for the sake of, you know, trying to bring down the capitalist system or impose some religious rights on society or whatever it may be. You're more likely to listen to them, I think.
We've got to go. We could talk all night. Alexander Downer, thanks so much for making yourself available for this interview on Triple J.
Thank you very much.